How's it going, everybody? So I made it. I actually got up this morning like I was planning to. The wind is a bit gusty today, so I don't know exactly how good the audio is going to be. I have to position myself so that the sun's actually on my face so that you can see what's going on. But I'm crossing my fingers and hoping that the audio is going to come out okay. So today I wanted to talk about something fairly important. And what that is it's a simple question. And the question is, why is this lion tooth the most important thing that I own? It's kind of a head scratcher, isn't it? Well, and it comes with a story. Now, since I was a young lad, back, when little Matthew was just little Tot running around, I had always had a desire to tell stories. I loved films, I loved books, I loved audio dramas, and telling stories was something that was incredibly important to me. As time went on, though, I started to realize that there were some stories that were more important to tell than other stories. Some stories were just fun, and don't get me wrong, I love a fun story. But some stories have a purpose. There's a reason behind why they are being told. And sometimes those stories can help people, can help change people's lives. And as time went on and I discovered that this was something that I was passionate about, those were the stories that I wanted to be able to tell. And this grew from playing around with cameras in the backyard to the love of filmmaking and photography that I currently have today, ultimately culminating recently in the 2 trips to Zimbabwe that I have had the opportunity to take. The first trip to Zimbabwe was a rousing success. I took all my camera equipment down there, and I saw firsthand what the conditions were like in the country. I saw poverty and sadness and fear and destitution that I didn't think were possible in our modern world. But I also saw hope and life and excitement and a willingness to drive forward into the future. Well, the video that I produced last year enabled a bigger team to go out to Zimbabwe this year, and I had the privilege of going with them. And we did a lot of wonderful work out there. We put together a medical clinic that served well over 400 people, helped put an addition onto a building that was going to house a school for orphans. I'll talk more at length about this in a future video. But the reason the story is important was because on that trip, the only souvenir that I brought back for myself was a lion's tooth. Now, let me assure you that this lion's tooth was harvested legally and ethically and came from a lion that would not have been in a condition to use it. There are very strict hunting and harvesting laws in place in Zimbabwe, and this tooth was obtained legally and ethically. But this tooth became very important to me because while I was in Zimbabwe, I got a mosquito bite. Well, actually, I got a lot of mosquito bites. But at least one of those mosquitoes was carrying malaria. Now, we don't really have malaria here in the United States, so to many of us, we don't realize just how serious this disease is. But let me tell you guys, it's bad. It's really, really bad. Up until I think it was 30 years ago, we didn't have a cure. Malaria was a fatal disease until 30 years ago. We have antibiotics now that will help to suppress it and heck can even prevent you from getting it, but unfortunately I didn't have those antibiotics in my system when I went. And I had no idea I was sick when I came back. The whole reason that I went on this trip was because I wanted to tell stories that would help to improve the lives of the people in Zimbabwe, especially the orphan children that we were working with. But I almost didn't get to complete the reason that I was out there. It started with swelling, just pockets of swelling that built up in various parts of my body. And in the course of about 24 hours, I went from I don't feel so good to I can barely stand. Thank God that my wife caught it in time and insisted that we go to the urgent care. Guys, I was a mess. Right? I was so cold from the fever that I was physically shivering inside 3 layers. And those of you who know me, I don't get cold. Every movement that my body made sent pain shooting through it. It was like being stabbed with a needle over and over again every time I moved. There was a dull ache throughout everything, kind of like that awful ache you get from the flu. But let me tell you, the flu is mild compared to this. Point being, this one was bad. We got to the doctor, and they didn't want to treat us, or us. They didn't want to treat me because they were afraid of what the implications would be, because the CDC does not take a kind stance on people getting sick. But thank God they chose to give me basically the strongest antibiotics you can get, which are delivered through a shot to one's rear. Don't ever want to go through that experience again. The problem was the shot made me feel worse. When I got home, my fever spiked to 105.5 degrees. If you've never had a fever that high, there are not words to explain just how miserable I was. And the problem is that I spent several days of my convalescence alone, and with my history of depression, that was not a good combination. And I remember there was one day I had been trying desperately to get the antibiotics down that they gave me, and I kept throwing the antibiotics back up because my stomach just couldn't take it anymore. I couldn't take it anymore. I was so miserable. And there came a point where I said, I'm not going to take these. And in that moment, I felt something that I don't really know how to describe. But I was lying in bed, couldn't move. And it was like there were 2 pathways opened up in front of me. And the one pathway led to death. It was like I was being given the option to just let go. I could literally feel whatever it is that binds my soul to my body. And all I wanted to do was give up. It hurt so bad. I was so miserable. I had no hope that it was ever going to be any better. I just wanted it to end. And in that moment, it could have ended. I'm not talking about suicide. It was literally a choice between letting go or not letting go. I turned my head to the side, and sitting on my dresser was this lion's tooth. And as I looked over at it, it was like a parade of all of the people that I had ever cared about in my life flashed through my eyes. my mother, my father, my brothers, my sisters, my wife, my friends, and then the faces of the children that I had seen on my trip. One by one, they went through my mind. And I realized in that moment that I couldn't give up. And so I reached with my hand and I tried to grab the lion tooth, and mine was so weak, my fingers just brushed across it and I couldn't grab it. And I gritted my teeth and I reached out and I tried again, and I failed the second time. Let me tell you, you don't know what depression is until you can't pick up something because your body doesn't work. But I reached out a third time, and my fingers closed over the tooth. And I pulled the tooth into me and I said, no, I am going to live. And I'm going to finish what I started. And I will complete the tasks that I set out to do. And I will use my talents and my storytelling to bring help to these kids. I reached out my other hand, and I felt something furry touch it. It was warm, and it was soft. And if you didn't grow up with the Chronicles of Narnia like I did, then this isn't going to make any sense to you. But I looked over at what my fingers were brushing against. And I swear, in my room, there was a lion. I don't know how it was possible. He was so big, he filled the entire room. I shook my head and blinked my eyes. It was probably not much of a shake because of how weak I was. And opened them again, and it was just my cat, Alvin. I was running a high fever. I was weak. I was on an empty stomach. So most of you will say, yeah, you just hallucinated. But I know what I saw. Inside this tooth somehow is bound up the strength of the lion, of the lion. And now this tooth is the most important thing that I own, because that was the day when I had my way out, when I could have let go, when I could have chosen not to keep fighting. And that was the day that I said no. I will stand and I will move forward, no matter what this world and this life throws in my direction. Africa herself tried to kill me, but she failed. And I have this as proof. Every day we make a choice. Every day we make a decision whether we're going to fight or whether we're going to roll over and die. Remember the lion's tooth. Remember the lion, and have the strength to fight another day.